Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome from the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Today, we are delighted to present a very unique public lecture and conversation on the theme of demystifying yoga beyond asana and pranayama, organized in collaboration with the India International Center. We're also truly honored and grateful to Shri K.N. Srivastav for generously giving time out of his busy schedule and agreeing to open today's evening with his welcome remarks. Shri K.N. Srivastav is a distinguished former civil servant and director of the India International Center. May I request Shri K.N. Srivastav to kindly join us on stage?
I would begin by expressing our gratitude to Sri Raji Malhotra, Secretary and Managing Trustee of Foundation for Universal Responsibility, for bringing this wonderful lecture that we are going to witness. As we all know, yoga has not only become very popular inside the country and overseas, but it has also been rendering all kinds of benefits that we need. Now the allopathic practitioners, they themselves have been advising, to their patients, to others, to take to yoga in order to live a very healthy life. I come from city of Bangalore, where yoga, Ayurveda, they have been so very popular since quite some time. North India, of course, they have started spreading much recently. Yoga benefits have been acknowledged by everyone. The Yoga Day, which was started by United Nations, is being celebrated year after year with a lot of, enthusiasm by almost all the countries. We are fortunate that we are having two very important, exponents of yoga. That is Dr. Ananda Bhavanani ji and Dr. Sangeeta Biagi. I'm quite sure that the conversation which Sri Raji Malhotra ji is going to have with both of them would give us a lot of insight about various facets of yoga, and will also tell us as to how you can benefit from yoga in our day-to-day life, not only physically, even emotionally and mentally. So without saying much and without taking much of time, I once again express my deep gratitude to the two speakers and Sri Raji Malhotra in particular. And I wish that in future there'll be more and more occasions for us at the IIC to see such programs. And we're looking forward to Sri Raji Malhotra ji for his initiative in this regard with a lot of fond hope. So with this, once again, I thank all of you and welcome very heartily to all three of you to IIC. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Maharishi Putra and Dr. Biagi. This is a sort of a newly invented joke between us. Yesterday at an event at the Habitat Center, I was sort of grappling for how I should best describe him, because Dr. Bhavanani is a very secularized expression of his vast achievements and as a yogacharya, that tradition. And my connection with him goes back to his father, who was a Maharishi, and as I'm sure he will become very soon if he isn't one already, was in 40 years ago when I spent 3 months with him at his ashram in Pondicherry. And, this is one of many events. So those of you who have already attended the earlier ones are familiar with the story, but I should repeat it nonetheless, because I think it's an important expression and sense of the lineage that he has inherited that goes back, several hundred years at least. And so I've been back from England, and with my sort of due quota of feeling self-important and significant, And when I ended up at the ashram, all of us inmates of the ashram were obliged to do karma yoga during our stay there, first thing in the morning. And so I was assigned cleaning the bathrooms, and they were all Indian style. And so that gave me the first sort of experiential sense of the larger aspiration of yoga and how to prepare for that. And particularly when you contrast that with the politically incorrect, but nonetheless, with the handsome young men and the svelte young ladies, who hold impossible yogic postures in all the books that you see, in all the demonstrations that you see, as a form of corporatization and consumption to drive people to the rich traditions of yoga. But I really wanted to start with what the topic today is, and the sense of confusion in many people's minds and ambiguity, because yoga has become such a loosely used word. I mean, it goes back, to the yogis in the Himalayas and the Upanishads, and to yoga in Times Square in New York, to yoga now to be a competitive sport, certainly at the Asian Games and likely at the Olympics. Also, that the various forms of yoga, and so I think it's the 6th chapter of the Gita where Krishna introduces the idea of karma yoga, and then we had Swami Vivekananda who sort of articulated the 4 yogas, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga and Raj yoga. So where does the yoga in I wanted to say popular perception, but the popular perception is so mixed up. So in the tradition that you come from, what does yoga stand for? But before that, what is the aspiration of yoga? Historically, one might sort of suggest that the aspiration of all yoga would be equanimity of mind, to see the true nature of reality, to assimilate the idea of dukkha, and to be able to live a full life in the sense of not as corporate advertising suggests, but in sense of fulfillment of the possibilities of the self. And then finally, where the self itself would dissolve and merge into Ishvara or Brahma, depending on which.
Of yoga. Maharishi Patanjali, who is my go-to guy, a dear friend of mine, a time traveler, I even fondly call him Superman Pat. He has very clearly given us a system called Ashtanga Yoga. And that system in the Yoga Darshana, known as the Yoga Sutra, very clearly he says, Yoganga Nushtanat Ashuddhi Kshaye Jnana Deepti Aviveka Kyatehi. He says, why do you have the limbs of yoga? Again, they are not steps of yoga, they are limbs. He says the Ashuddhi Kshaye, which is why you had to clean the bathrooms. Ashuddhi Kshaye has to be there. Mala Shuddhi has to be there. Bhavana Shuddhi has to be there. Nadi Shuddhi has to be there. Ashuddhi Kshaye Jnana Deepti, that inner luminosity must blossom, and Viveka Khyate, the highest discernment between the real and the unreal. must be experienced. And that is why he says in the very next verse, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhaya, Ashtau Angani. And where does this all lead? Kaivalya. So the actual purpose of yoga is Kaivalya, liberation, nothing less. However, that seems utopian. People ask me, what is your aspiration? I say Kaivalya, nothing less. But until Kaivalya occurs, we need to manifest our humaneness. My father used to say, we were Homo erectus, we stood up. I don't know whether it's a good idea, but we stood up because gravity causes so many disorders because of the erect position. Homo erectus became Homo sapien, the wise human being. And then we, in our own infinite wisdom, said we are the wisest. So we said Homo sapien sapien. You can see the ego trick there. My father used to say the next level of evolution is Homo nobilis, the noble human being. And for me, a yogi is a noble human being with the aspiration towards the highest kaivalya and understanding that we are just a pixel in the whole universal picture.
You'll have to elaborate for us. There were several points that you made, but we'll just stay with liberation. So, what do we understand in yoga through liberation?
See, Patanjali is very clear. He and the Buddha shared a very similar perspective. Everything is dukkha, and you have to transcend dukkha. And that is why he says, Dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. The one who has developed viveka realizes that sarvam dukkham and says, I have had enough of this drama. Let me please transcend it. So the two T's of yoga, YOGA doesn't have any T in it, but there are two T's of yoga. One is transformation, the second is transcendence. And if your yoga practice is not enabling transformation and transcendence, please ask yourself the question, is it really yoga or just physical exercise?
You mentioned dukkha and variously translated unsatisfactoriness, suffering, or what have you. So, what is this relationship to dukkha that we need to achieve in order not to either experience dukkha, to accept dukkha, to internalize and become completely, truly aware of the reality of dukkha, and so surrender to it? Because the fantasy is that when you achieve liberation, you are, to use popular jargon, blissed out. And that's what a lot of people are seeking in terms of whatever form and manner or techniques or traditions they follow, whether traditional or modern, from hashish to yoga.
My father was clear on that. He said yoga is not another LSD trip. That is not what it is. He was very clear on that. Because he said all the drug highs will be followed by a low. But when you have these higher spiritual experiences, there is no low after that. The second question came, once you are liberated, once you attain kaivalya, samadhi, and all that, what are you going to be like? What will happen? And again, my father was very clear. He said, if earlier you were cooking, you will still cook. If you are teaching, you will still teach. If you are dancing, you will still dance. If you are conducting events like this, you will keep on doing it. But you will be doing it from a new perspective. So it's not running away to the high Himalayas and hiding in a cave. Whether it has Wi-Fi or not is a different matter. Because my goal is also a cave in the high Himalayas with Wi-Fi. So, that's another, don't get me onto that. But coming back, dukkha is existent. And that is why we cannot deny dukkha. We have to face the dukkha and understand that dukkha is to be transcended and used as a stepping stone to higher experiences. So you are not running away from dukkha, you are facing it and transcending it. I would give a simple physiological example because we have Vigilani sir here. Stress. You cannot run away from stress. Everything which is living has stress. The only people who have no stress are the dead people. If you are living, you have stress. Now, either the stress can kill you, it becomes distress, or it is eustress and enables you to become a better version of yourself. So, how you perceive stress, if you perceive it, oh my God, I'm stressed, it's going to kill you. If you say, fine, this stress is my gym. May I become a better version of myself, you are going up the evolutionary ladder. Same thing with dukkha. Don't run away from it. Face it, accept it, and say, you have no control over me. I am a person who will master myself. Swaswami Saktyo, says Patanjali. Become a master of your own self.
Doesn't this in some ways, I'm sorry to labor this, but I'm trying to get to the core of the idea of a better version of oneself, higher experience. Obviously, these are non-conceptual experiences which we are trying to verbalize. So I think there is often, as aspirants, we lack clarity about what is it that we aspire for or aspire to become. The Buddha, certainly the Mahayana version of Buddhism, recommended karuna, altruism, that if you were infinitely compassionate, the sense of the self that suffers would soften, and or unsatisfactoriness would soften. So in what ways is that aspiration, is there some way that we can make it tangible, concrete, articulate, so we have a firmer sense of the destination? Of course, there is the familiar cliche, the journey is the destination, but then the journey too is an experience.
Yoga is both the process and the outcome. The process of yoga enables the outcome of yoga. So, yoga has samadhi here, is said. So, yoga is that highest state, yet it is also the methodology to go there. And just like the Buddha said, Patanjali says, because for me, I cannot go without quoting my favorite Superman Pat. Maitri karuna mudito pekshanam sukha dukha punya apunya vishayanam bhavanartha chitta prasadanam. He has given the same four. Maitri, karuna, mudita, upekshanam. And he says you have to develop the discernment. This is why for me yoga is developing a keen discerning intellect that can actually know what is and what is not. So he says when somebody is suffering, have karuna. When somebody is in sukha, you have that beautiful sense of maitri. Maitri, karuna, mudita, upekshanam. When should you have mudita? When you meet people like Rajiv ji, who are living punya. When you find someone being good, being noble, for God's sake, cheer them on. Come on. And when you find upekshanam, stay away. Indifference, equanimity. And I tell you, don't worry about headstand, don't worry about kapalabhati, don't worry about any asana, pranayama, shatkarma. If you can adopt these chatur bhavana, which are also called Brahma Vihara, you will have the clarity and you will know what is to be done, when to do it, how to do it, and who can help you do it.
Our civilizational heritage has the grand tradition of method and wisdom. So we have been talking about the wisdom aspect. Yoga, as we understand it and observe it, seems to be the method dimension. And both the method and the motivation or the intention. I come from a Buddhist tradition where there is a great emphasis on intention, motivation. So both the method and intention seem so utterly confused, distorted, and diverse from the fact, as I mentioned, that you can have a competition to bring in a competitive element in yoga, or that you can meditate for the cameras, or that you can build temples to win elections. I mean, this is the popular perception of the manner in which the spiritual aspiration, of which yoga is one, manifests itself. So, how do we, or what do you consider are the legitimate methods? And here I'm talking about the diverse, not steps, but facets that you mentioned. Of course, in popular perception, yama and niyama precedes asana. And so, what are the steps? What do you have to? What do you think about the various methods in the marketplace possibilities and techniques that are available to us, for which we often have to pay handsomely, the transactional aspects? So, as a yoga, well, I won't use the Maharishi phrase again, so I'll just call you Acharya, Yoga Acharya. What concerns you? And the fact that in this millennium, at this time in the history of the evolution of yoga, it is being so thoroughly distorted.
Well, on one side, you can choose to be depressed about it. And sometimes you get agitated about it when you see yoga being sold. Because for me, yoga is my divine mother. And I would love to see my mother respected, loved, treated with the dignity she deserves. But then I realize it is not for me to protect yoga, because that's another ego trip, that I'm going to stand up and protect yoga. Yoga can protect herself. Yoga is bigger than all of us. But what I have come to realize is, I think, maybe to be kind to people who are ignorant. And if an asana class is all they want, so be it. Because who am I to actually tell them you cannot go to an asana class because that's not really yoga? That is their choice. But if the teacher, and this is where I think the responsibility lies in the teachers of yoga today, that they have to help the person. The person may come in from asana. Another person may come in because they are having a health issue. They have diabetes and they want to take up yoga. You cannot say, no, you have to be healthy before you do yoga. No, they have diabetes. They want to come in. The entry point may be seeking health. Again, even with yogasana competitions, it is not yoga, it is yogasana competition. It may be an entry point for young kids to come into yoga. So fine. But the responsibility I feel, and I feel let down by the teachers of yoga and the so-called great masters of yoga, who are not saying yoga is bigger than just asana. Yoga is bigger than just having a pranayama for your diabetes. Yoga is bigger. So I think the way forward is, let people come from the different tributaries, but let them not forget there's this grand ocean of yoga, and not stop at a trickle in a corner someplace thinking that is yoga. Because to quote Sri Aurobindo, all life is yoga. So if all life is yoga, how can I say this is yoga and that is not yoga? So, it's a quandary that I often find myself. So what I have come to understand, what my parents have taught me, is real yoga will always be safe, but most probably will be hidden away from the marketplace. You are not going to find real yoga in the marketplace. And the seeker who is seeking it will find the real yoga even if it is hidden without a board on the main road like our ashram. We don't have a board on the main road. People will struggle to get to us. And people say, why don't you have a board and why don't you advertise? I say, no. We will continue doing what we are doing. Those who are seeking will come to us, because our literature, our culture says, when the student is ready, the master will appear. So the job of the Student is to get ready. The job of the master is to be ready for the student who is ready. And again, I repeat, the responsibility to maintain the sanctity of yoga lies in the yoga teachers of today.
I'm not going to let go on that. It lies in the teachers today, but the teachers are products in general of institutions. You have had the privilege of a lineage which you were born into, but the vast majority of teachers today come from institutions. And some of the institutions are state-run, and many of the institutions are private, for-profit bodies. So intervention isn't easy, but we're not going to go down that road. I just wanted to suggest that there is a major risk there. But talking about the student being ready for the teacher and the teacher being ready for the student. So tell us about yourself and how yoga came into your life living in the West, and how you felt ready. Were you looking out for the teacher, and how did he appear?
Namaskaram. Buonasera a tutti. And thank you so much, Rajiv Ji, for including me in this conversation. I feel quite honored and with the blessings of Guruji, my Acharya, Dr. Ananda, I'm happy to reply. So I was living in New York City at the time. And today I shared the story of how I'm a survivor of 9/11 in New York City. I'm originally from Italy, but I was completing my PhD in New York City at NYU, which has a campus right near where Ground Zero is. So the experience was traumatic, and the type of society that the US is did not allow for much space for grieving. So they thought that productivity could heal the trauma. And a month after 9/11, I was defending my PhD exams. So I just swallowed up whatever was there, got into studying and did it, and graduated, and very happy. The whole ceremony, everything went on and on and on. And about 2 years later, I was teaching at a college, Vassar College, upstate New York.
Just tell us what your PhD thesis was and what you were teaching, because that will connect later.
Yes, it will.
Today.
So the PhD is in cultural anthropology and performance studies at the Tisch School of the Arts. So it's a social approach to the performance of any culture and also the performance of identity. That's what I was very interested in. How do we perform different identities depending on the context? And how can we be true to each context without losing the sense of self, and also have cultural intelligence to understand what's best in a particular context? So the whole PhD was that. But particularly, I was very interested in a ritual from southern Italy where music and dance are used to heal people from spider bites. It's called tarantismo. So the famous tarantella, I don't know if you've heard of the dance, which is portrayed in movies as a kind of a frenzied dance. That's a cultural misappropriation. That's not true. It's actually a very intelligent folk system of medicine, where for each tune corresponds a specific vibration of the venom in the blood system of the person bitten. So it's really interesting. And so the musician's diagnosis is playing different tunes, like ragas, basically. So if the spider is, it's a whole anthropological study, but if the spider is unmarried, shall I go on with this, or let's come back to the teachers?
Spider.
Yeah, and then of course a spider and snakes. So then here's the Kundalini at some point. Okay, but so anyways, I was teaching, and I was apparently in this very privileged position. I was healthy, loved by my family in Italy, with a good job and all. But deep inside, I had a very a real sunken feeling. that would not go away. So I tried with this, I tried with that. Okay. One night, the college had invited a Bharatanatyam dancer. So we had a whole program of Bharatanatyam, and for 3 hours, I was the happiest person on earth. I was like a kid. So I was in the front seat, and the woman was performing, and I was just clapping and laughing. I was so happy, mesmerized. So I went back to my home and did some searches on Bharatanatyam, and Chidambaram came, and then, this and this and this, and then all of a sudden, Ananda Ashram came. Just one night Google search, or not Google, whatever it was. But what drew me to it were two things. First of all, we couldn't come to the ashram right away. We had to do a correspondence course, the yoga step by step, which would take at least a year and a half. And at that time, it was done, they were shipping, it wasn't digital online, and okay. So I liked that. Being an academic, I was like, okay, there's some seriousness in this because they require a certain commitment. And then the second one is how in the ashram, all of the arts of Bharat, music, dance, and then the study of the Varnamalas and Sanskrit and so on, are brought together as a way of life with yoga. And so being a performer myself, I was really inclined. So I tried it. I had never practiced yoga before. I was 36, so I was really, but it was just right.
Now I know why he wants Wi-Fi in the cave.
Exactly. Exactly.
Carry on.
Yeah, so I finished the step by step, and then I visited the ashram, and I remember telling my parents, I'm leaving this academic job to go study in an ashram in India, and they had no idea what was going on. And now they're the biggest fan.
Was he waiting at the gate?
No, he was not. In fact, our connection, it first began with Ammaji for me. Our connection wasn't, because Ammaji at the time was Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani. She was the one in charge of making sure the students were filling in the questionnaire, and she would send us letters. And so it was through her. And I came to the ashram and I saw the sign, enter here only if you're happy. And I was not happy. I was coming from this, like, really. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. For the first 3 months, it was not, cleaning of the toilet and then the deconstruction of the ego. I kept having dreams of flying pizzas and all sorts of different. It was really not funny. Now I make fun of it, but it's not. Anyway, so with Amma, I really modeled, she's a model for me because she is really capable of embodying the teachings, especially in her capacity to have responsibility. She's able to respond to any particular situation. At the time, she was running the ashram, taking care of the kids and helping Dr. Nan. Anyway, and she never rushed. She doesn't rush anywhere. And I don't know how that was. I mean, I'm Italian. I move even when I sleep, I move. So I was like, this woman was just flying, but then also being super practical. And I realized that there was something there for me. So I finished the 6-month training to become a teacher. And of course, immediately as soon as Dr. Nanda and Devasena were singing and performing and dancing and the kids and all of that, I knew this was good for me, but I had a lot of resistance, a lot of tamas, a lot of toxins and a lot of trauma. So it wasn't super good. But then I realized I wasn't ready to go back home, and I applied to stay for another 6 months. And in the second training, something happened because Ammaji realized how much I love singing. And she said, Divya Priya was maybe 6 or 5 at the time. So we're talking 15, 16 years ago. And she said, Sangeeta, you're ready to take Carnatic music. You'll go with Divya Priya. So there were all these kids, 5, 3, 4 years old, and me sitting there. It was wonderful. And that's when it happened for me. And that's when I was really able to enter a different perception, a different sensitivity, a different level of refinement through sound, through music. I remember our teacher used to spend maybe hours telling me, you don't pronounce this T, you pronounce it T. And to my Italian ear, it was just no different. So I was like, okay, so T. And she was like, no, 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 no. It's not T. I'm making fun of myself. I'm not making fun of the language. I just couldn't understand. And so that's where it began. You know, I began to actually let go. We talked about today of let go of preconceived ideas and the stressors, and that's how I began to feel whole again and heal from that trauma, was to focus on the refinement of the music.
So letting go found you your teacher.
Exact. That's when there was a specific instance, and I'll close this here, but there was an instance where Dr. Nanda was singing with in Devasena. When I say Dr. Nanda, Devasena is always there anyway. So, and they were singing and performing, and there was this Bharatanatyam theater piece that they were choreographing to prepare at Yoganjali Natyalayam with teenagers. So there was a lot of movement, a lot. And they had kindly invited me to accompany them as a musician in this performance, which is a great honor. So there was no score. There was just, you just listen and learn. So I was just, doing my best. And then I was preoccupied with something or just staring mesmerized at the dancers. And then I turned around and I saw something that I will never forget. You know the story of Krishna eating mud and his mother, scolding Krishna, don't eat mud. And he opens the mouth and the whole universe is in the mouth, with the planets and so on. So I turned around and I saw that in Dr. Nanda's eyes. I saw the universe in his eyes. It was a moment, and that's when I knew. That's when I knew that dimension is possible. He modeled it for me, and at the time, that's what I needed. I needed a way out. Because my consciousness was there. So the relationship began, and it has been tested many times.
By him.
By him. Yeah.
I know.
And by Amaji, and by Devasena, and by Divyapriya, and by Anandraj. It's by the family.
You know, the relationship between student and teacher in our traditions is a very sacred and very intense one. And so I'm going to ask Swamiji that what is, and how would you articulate this relationship between, in the Tibetan tradition, again, I come from, it refers to samaya, where the teacher and the student, their karmas, in fact, intertwine, and they become responsible for each other. It is to that degree of commitment on both sides. So it's not a transaction where you go and pay some money and you become a guru. And so that guru chela cheli relationship is a very sacred one. So what do our traditions, how do they describe them? This was like a eureka moment. And was it a eureka moment for you that I found one of my disciples? And we tend to romanticize this very often, this potential relationship, and we become obsessed with finding a teacher, or and life is incomplete. We haven't yet found our guru. And then we'll come to what happens when you find the guru, and very often there are problems with that. But what is this ideal relationship?
Well, when you look at the Guru Shishya, Guru Chela relationship, it encompasses every known relationship that a human being can have. Every relationship is there. You will love each other, you will hate each other, you will bless each other, you will curse each other, but you will grow together. And that is why that Guru Shishya Parampara is vital for the continuation of all dharmic traditions. Because without the Guru Shishya Parampara, without that person to person, heart to heart, Atma to Atma connection, these teachings can never flow. Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is not just a scripture that was given on PPT to Arjuna. No, it was a soulful connection that transcends time. And every Guru Shishya relationship is like that. Now, I have been blessed that I have seen those relationships modeled by my father, modeled by my mother, that I can grow into those relationships and find students who then become a light onto themselves. For example, in the audience, we have Sumit. Sumit trained with us and today is changing, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of lives. I have my dear Shwetika there, our couple. We used to tease her at ISCM, who embodies yoga. I have this whole yoga family who embody and live the teaching. So yoga is not something you just do. You have to live it. You have to become it. And the Guru Shishya relationship, the Guru Chela relationship is where you nurture each other. That is why the Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu has to be understood. And we have to understand Mavid Vishavahi, may we not hate each other by the end of this episode. Because a guru is bound to correct the disciple whether they like it or not. A guru is not here to win elections. My father used to say, I am not here to win a popularity contest. Whether you like me or not doesn't matter. Your spiritual evolution is all that I am concerned with. And if you can attain it here, so be it. If you can attain it someplace else, so be it. A student, a shishya, a chela is not the property of a guru. And that is a very important part of this relationship. It is an unconditional love. It is an unconditional respect. It is a mutual symbiotic growth. Because as the shishya grows, the guru will also grow. Now, I refrain from ever using the term guru for myself. Some of these crazy ones like to use that term, and I'm like, no, because for me, I have seen what a guru is. I have seen the example of what a guru is. And that is a term which is very, very heavy. In fact, guru means the heavy one, which is why most gurus become very heavy. Huh?
That's a
Like
wonderful
planet.
excuse.
Well, it's sometimes a good excuse.
Well, I'll try and put on some more weight.
But just because you're heavy, you're not a guru.
Well, let's just go a step back a bit. We've spoken about Ammaji. We've spoken about the Ananda Ashram and your father, and I think that it's so important what is unfolded in the ashram because of its many dimensions of activity, of nurturing at different levels, and of a variety of people of different backgrounds, from Europeans such as you, from Indian Sikhs such as myself, or people from the community, the disadvantaged and the unfranchised, who find comfort and entry into the ashram community. So that is, in a sense, the true democratization of yoga and taking it close to the people. And so when we were talking about beyond asana and pranayama, give us a sense of the elements of the method of the practice. We generally talk about asana and pranayama and meditation. We'll throw that in without a clear understanding of what meditation is. So maybe a brief reflection on what is meditation. We're all doing it in some manner or the other. But there are all these other elements that you experience, right from the obligation to clean the toilet, to the Bharatnatyam, to the singing, to looking at the morning sun. So give us a sense of what the elements of...
When I grew up as a young child in the ashram, from the age of 4, when I was anointed my father's successor, the day would be something like early morning Vedic chanting. I had a Vedic Pandit teaching me the Vedic chanting. I would then go for my singing class. I would do my mridangam. We would have the dance. I would learn English with my mother. I would learn mathematics with Renu Kaka. Go and help my father do the puja for the Guru Parampara of 8 gurus who precede us. In between, go and play with the monkeys, which is why I'm such a monkey. Play with the monkeys. Used to play with the deer. We had a mini zoo. You know, Life of Pi, there was never a zoo in Pondicherry, except in our ashram. We had a miniature zoo. So I always say that is the zoo he talked about. And all the village kids whose fathers didn't have a job, kids whose fathers were drunkards, kids whose fathers were rickshaw pullers, and kids of IAS officers, IPS officers would all be in one class together and receiving a cultural education of yoga as a lived experience. Ammaji would make it fun, because we say that if you don't make yoga fun, children will never take to it. So if you tell a child who is 6 years old, sit down and meditate, you have lost them for the whole time. They need to have activity. They need fun. And that is where yogasana competitions are useful at that age to bring them into the system. Adult yogasana competitions are a totally different story. But kids, what happens is that Amma used to talk to them about the yama niyama. And she would talk about the gunas. I still remember a beautiful discussion with hundreds of kids. On Sundays, about 1,000 kids would come, free food. They would come to the puja, there would be free food, they would have yoga, dance, music class. And many of them came because they could learn swimming in our round swimming pool, where you go round and round. Some came to see the ducks and the monkeys and the deer, and then came to the yoga. And Amma would bring these beautiful concepts. There is the Tamasika Guna. There is the Rajasika, there is the Satvika. And she would go on this beautiful exposition to these kids. And they would all be just looking at her as if, there was an angel and imbibing it. And then she would ask a question. How many of you think you are Tamasik? No hands go up. How many think you are Rajasik? A few. How many think you are Satvik? I still remember that. So these concepts came alive. You were not taught on a board or in a PPT, there are 3 gunas, tamas, rajas, sattvas. There are not 8 anga. It's not to be taught that way. It is to be made fun. She would have fancy dress events for kids, yoga fancy dress. They would dress up as a Rajasika guna and have, the activity depicted. They would dress up as a lotus and come and do the Padmasana. Now imagine for the children, it is yoga comes alive in its wholesome Purna Swarupa. They learned asanas. And these kids, I tell you, yoga asanas are an amazing tool to bring about a revolution of equality. Because the best people in yogasana are often people who are on the fringe. It's amazing. Just like in North America, the underprivileged communities have come up through sports. Yogasana can do that for our young kids also. It can create an equitable society. So despite the issue of yoga as a competition, yogasana has a role. Coming back, when the students come, they are not just coming for an asana class. They get up in the morning, they have the arati, they understand that these deities are energies. It is not idol worship. Amma would say it is the ideal worship. You worship the ideals through which you want to grow. They would do a Surya Namaskar with an actual rising sun, not a sun salutation in an AC room at 10 o'clock at night on the 7th floor. That is not yoga. I'm sorry. Despite me saying all life is yoga, you find where this part comes into me. They understand it. There are the crows, there are the trees. And then Pranayama sadhana. The Pranayama sadhana of this tradition is so deep. They would have 2 hours of Pranayama that goes into Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga practices. We talk of Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga. In my father's teachings, there are practices that can enable the Jnana and the Vijnana to grow. And they have deep study of all the scriptures.
I'm going to interrupt for an insight into two things. One is that you're talking about a very intensely dedicated, committed woman who embodied this aspiration and her own processes, which there is in the context go that she came into India as a PhD scholar, stayed on, and has written perhaps the most definitive volume on the history and practices of yoga. So that's a unique woman in a unique situation. If what we are really looking at, and I think that there's a felt need that how can we diversify? It's a struggle in all of education. So at the moment, we just throw in a yoga period in the school syllabus. And so how can we nurture yoga and its aspirations, as you have articulated, as a means of, I mean, the Dr. Bijlani is doing this kind of work at the Aurobindo School and the Aurobindo Ashram here. But that's a small oasis of possibility. So as someone who's on so many committees and wielding ever increasing influence, and may that grow for all our sakes. So that's what I meant when I said, what are the methodologies that we can use? What are the structures, the practices, beyond getting a half-baked teacher, with due apologies, who just comes and teaches you asanas, postures, and a little bit of pranayama thrown in. No reference to yama niyama. And as you mentioned, that the techniques that Maharishi Geetananda had to make real jnana instead of just the wisdom part of it. And what interests me as a struggling aspirant most of all is that what are the methods that we can use to internalize the wisdom so that they become reflexive responses. Some of these things we're experiencing at the workshops that you're conducting. But I think this is at the core now, where even though I think you're being very considerate and polite for the institutional response to the practice and promotion of yoga. So what are the kinds of things that we should be looking at to nurture? Because if dance, music, even that is being corrupted. Its authenticity is being corrupted. The alap is disappearing from Indian classical music because it started, of course, with the fact that the gramophone record don't really, run for 30 minutes. But today, how many musicians will dare to play an alap? So how do we, what steps can we take, or at least begin to understand the imperative of these diverse elements to this journey?
This is a billion-dollar question because, I remember many years ago at Moraji Desai, we had a committee that sat together to create a syllabus for taking yoga to schools. And we had members of the Indian Yoga Association from the diverse traditions come together, make suggestions, created a syllabus, created a textbook, and then after that, God knows what happened to it. So there is a lot of gap between the intention and the delivery. And so what is happening today is people want shortcuts. If you take a shortcut, you are not going to get what you want. You are not going to get where you want. You are not going to get there how you want. So I believe that when we want to take yoga in its complete form, first of all the teacher training courses have to be residential. They have to have a structure where yoga is lived. Because otherwise, it just becomes, can you write a theory paper?
So what would be the elements of this lived experience that you would seek to provide?
Well, one thing for sure, there has to be an early morning class. You cannot have people coming in at 9 o'clock for a typical university setup. There has to be a morning session. They have to understand a process of how a person, say a student, can be enabled to come into the yoga practice. So there are play methods. So if you have a young kid, you have to have play methods. This is missing in most yoga syllabus. You have to play with the kid. You have to make it fun. For example, a kid who is 5, I have to say, okay, let us come into the Simhasana, the lion posture, and go, ah! That kid will love it. Because you have to become a kid when you teach. So we need to not only have the techniques, but the teaching pedagogy where you realize who is your target audience, how to reach them where they are, and how to deliver what you want. But there has to be an understanding of the theoretical, philosophical, psychological framework of yoga. If it is only asana and even a bit of pranayama, I still reiterate it becomes a physical exercise. And a big mistake that I have seen happen over the decades, the physical education teachers are sent for a 1 month crash course and become the yoga teachers in school. The way you teach physical education is different than the way you have to teach yoga. And we have to understand that. Because I cannot, tell a dentist to do an appendectomy. I understand a dentist is trained different, a surgeon is trained different. I have to understand that. So we need to have a comprehensive philosophy, psychology of yoga should be there. They should understand that there are the different practices. I will give a simple example of how, when we teach our medical students in our university, all medical, nursing, physiotherapy, pharmacy, allied health, they all get yoga as part of the curriculum in our medical university at Pondicherry. And Bijlani sir has been there a few years ago also and seen the work. What we make sure is that they understand how health and yoga, especially the 8 limbs, can coexist. So I'll give an example. WHO says health should have a physical dimension. Then there is a mental dimension. There is a social dimension, and give or take a spiritual dimension. Because it is there, but it is not there. Okay? Spiritual dimension is there, but not there. So plus or minus. Already Maharishi Patanjali 2500 years ago has given Yama Niyama, which enhance the social dimension of health. He has given asana pranayama that enhance the physical dimension, the physiological dimension of health. He has given pratyahara and dharana for the mental dimension of health, and dhyana and samadhi for the spiritual dimension. It's already there, but we are not approaching it. We are going by a ekanga, asana. Now, of course, with due respect to my yoga uncle B.K. Sayangarji, what he used to say is, even through asana, you can understand the other limbs. Yes, for him it is possible. But for an ordinary student who is doing asana, is it possible? I don't know. But he realized it. So I believe that a student who's coming in, for the young kids, I created a primer of yoga theory 25 years ago, where I took 35 yoga texts created in question answer form. What is the Ashtanga Yoga? What is Kriya Yoga? What are the yamas? What are the niyamas? What are the asanas in Hatha Pradipika? Because the kid will not go and read Hatha Pradipika. They will not read the Yoga Sutra. But when they know that these are the concepts, those kids know more than many UGC net qualified yoga assistant professors. Because they have learnt it with interest. So that is the way I have done it.
You have done a lot of work on yoga chikitsa. And let's look at a practical application. I think that mental health is such a major growing challenge. And the data, certainly from the United States, where it's available about mental health and pharmacological interventions that are being taken, gives some indication that it was already something like 1 in 20 Americans were, this is before COVID, and after COVID, the numbers have gone up. So what would be the yogic approach to someone, and looking at a more concrete, depression has many different facets. So perhaps if we would look at fear or generalized anxiety disorder or what have you. So what would be the yoga chikitsa approach to addressing this individually? So someone came to you for therapy, and since you're now a teacher yourself, and someone came to you for therapy, and this is something that you said you had struggled with yourself So for you, it was a long journey to India, horses and what have you. But across the table, which is what kind of access is available, maybe a workshop, what would you seek to nurture, cultivate, help? How would you do that?
So it depends how long I can be with the student. Sometimes, as I teach in US universities now in Italy, the students come for a quarter or a semester, then they go. If it's a weekend workshop, it's a little different. So it depends a little bit. Let's say that we can be with the students once or twice a week for 4 months or 5 months. Depends also on the age group. So as I work with college students, I have mostly between 18, 21,
So
20.
let's take them as a target.
Let's take them because the mental health is affecting them quite a bit. Panic attacks, dizziness, so a lot of different things. So the jatis that we have been doing, the shaking of the head, shaking of the limbs, the bhavana shuddhi kriya with.
Okay, this audience isn't familiar
Yes,
with that.
true, right. So doing some preparatory warm-ups where we shake our limbs, shake the feet, shake the head, warm-ups to allow the person to get in touch with their vulnerability a little bit more because they will bring back an awareness of the body that mental health sometimes severs a bit. So we don't really want to feel that depression, and so we cut off the feeling of the body. So awareness of the body starts to fade off, then awareness of emotions and awareness of thought processes. That's where Swamiji and Amaji started by thinking, okay, let's work on how unaware we are, then awareness of the body, emotions, and mind. So I work with that model. I follow that model. So awareness of the body and shaking it, then awareness of the breath. So that's where I may sit them after perhaps a simple yoga practice, like a simple Aruna Surya Namaskar, where they can stretch and bend and move the spine. Move the internal organs, move the spine. Because that's another effect of mental health is that the postures that these kids are taking with their phone, they're crossing the legs and then they'll be on the couch and and that's of course is going to have an impact on their health. So just making sure whatever asana we do, that it is something, or kriya, that we do something that allows them to breathe in, breathe out, move the spine left and right. So after that, I sit them, but I find that that is very difficult for people who suffer from various types of mental health related symptoms. So if I can, I'll let them walk. The walking meditations, of course, are fantastic, but I add the breathing to them. So I let them inhale for 4 as they walk, exhale for 4 as they walk. So they're not thinking, I'm going to do some breathing for mental health. Otherwise, they'll shut off. They don't have the capacity yet. So we'll just breathe and walk, breathe and walk. And then finally, when they sit, now in the US particularly, there's this box breathing that has become super famous. And I never start with the box breathing.
What is box breathing?
Box breathing is inhaling, let's say on a count of 4 or 6. So we inhale 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold out 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a pranayama that is very highly sophisticated, that is part of the chakra pranayamas. It's not a simple practice. It's difficult to hold the breath. I don't know how they're just getting this box breathing in class.
Recommend?
I just recommend that they become comfortable with how uncomfortable it is to expand their lung capacity. It's very uncomfortable to expand our lung capacity. It's natural, but it's uncomfortable. So I remember Swamiji in the Yoga Step by Step, he wrote something, or he teaches something that he said, the capacity to breathe has nothing to do with your lungs. He said the lungs, if you could stretch them, would cover a football field or something like that. It has to do with your nervous system. Because if you're in a fight or flight, when you inhale, after maybe 3 seconds, you'll panic. You'll get exactly into what these people come to yoga for, to heal. So then I help them become aware of the uncomfortability. That's the first step. Is like, this is uncomfortable, I know. So let's see, the dukkha. Let's see what is behind this. What is going on? It's like, oh, I feel here. Oh, I feel there. So then we continue. Okay, let's see if we shake it off. And let me try to count it just a little bit slower. So the playfulness, let's count it a little bit slower. Let's try. 1, 2, and you'll see that they'll do it. And then it's like, wow, great. Then the following week, the same. The week after that, a little worse. Then about 1 month and a half into, they'll just go to 6 without even, it's all the time like this. It's not like 1 in a million, because they're comfortable with the uncomfortable limit. And they're willing to, in a relaxed way, just push it a little because they are relaxed, So working with relaxation, making them understand. And then, sorry, there's the one more, giving them phone breaks. So this is an academic, really, it just, when I was in school, we used to have bathroom breaks. Now, of course, we did all sorts of different things in bathroom breaks. We're not going to go into that. But people would leave the classroom. We couldn't wait to leave the classroom, right? So bathroom, everybody's going out the bathroom, then hanging out in the toilets or whatever we were doing, or in the garden. Now, over the last 2 years, the bathroom breaks doesn't matter. So what they do is I said, okay, guys, so now you can take a telephone break, a phone break. So they don't get up, they immediately grasp the phone, and then they stay there for the 10 minutes break to use the phone. I'm not making fun. It's actually not funny at all, but that's what it is. So then we finish the break. It's like, okay, is everybody okay? Do you need to use the restroom? No. Nobody need, because nobody's drinking water. So the hydration, the blue light from the screen, all of these. Now, I particularly do not think that an educator needs to fight with the evolution of the species. We are going into this, and I am myself on social media, I am on YouTube, I enjoy looking at, I do Duolingo to learn Hindi, it's not going so well. So all of these apps are there, but working with that so that the student doesn't feel threatened, that you're taking away a limb when you take away your phone. So just say, okay, so put away your phone and take a breath every time you want to grab the phone. Let's take a break, breathe in, breathe out. Okay, now look at your phone. Like it depends. So from a very, a Savitri pranayama, which is a refined pranayama, but all the way to then take a simple sukha pranayama before you grab the phone. So these help. The students are telling me that they are able to then bring the breathing as they're missing the train, or as somebody told them something, or they felt triggered by comparing themselves to an influencer. But then they were like, oh, wait, this is a stimulus response. I can actually take a deep breath and not be concerned about this and scroll on. So I think this is where we're going as educators, that we have to translate culturally what these experiences mean in the digital world. That's, I think. And also the question I have, I'm not the one who's asking.
Go right ahead.
A question I have, an open question I have is, what is the future of these teachings in the world of AI? Now we have apps for meditation. Now we have apps for asana. The watch can catch our BP and tell us, oh, you should breathe, box breathing 4x4, 2 minutes, So where are we going?
Swamiji.
As we came from the Delhi airport, there's a very good Hyundai ad where one hand in the namaskar is a human hand and the other is machine. I think actually that's where we are heading. So, to say that, okay, we cannot use AI is again negating what's going to be reality. But what we need to look at is enhance natural intelligence so that artificial intelligence can be used in an intelligent way. Because otherwise, if you only get trapped by artificial intelligence, couple of generations down from now, people will not even know how to count to 10. We are going to have that issue. So coming back from these teachings, I think what is important is to see, can these teachings be brought into models of AI? And there are people working on this without diluting the core ethos of yoga. So fine, AI can teach you asana. You have an amazing intelligent yoga mat that can tell you whether your asana is aligned or not. Now, great, but where is the humanistic approach? Where is the human to human touch? So, I think what is important is to find that middle path where we use the artificial intelligence to supplement what we can do with natural intelligence. But just to come back to what she was talking about with the students, in our university, we had a Center for Yoga Therapy Education Research. Now it is an Institute of Salatogenesis Complementary Medicine with a school of yoga therapy and a school of music therapy. All the thousands of students in our university, they know that we are a safe sanctuary for them. So whenever they feel tired, whenever they feel depressed, whenever they feel agitated, they know they can come to our yoga room or music room, lie down and do Shavasana. They know, I tell them, if somebody says, what are you doing? You say, I'm doing Shavasana and have a good nap. I have no problem. And you will have a safe space where you will not be judged. For students, it is very important. Create a space where they will not be judged. You won't say, oh, why are you coming here all the time? You should buck up and be better. No. Here is a space. Utilize that space when you need it. We are there for you. And I have had so many young doctors go out who come back and tell us, if it were not for the yoga therapy room, Shwetika knows many of those kids, if it were not for that room and the safe sanctuary you offered, I would not have completed my medical training because of mental health issues. Because the medical training will even make a normal person, you know what. And then if already you have certain issues, it's really going to traumatize you. So give them that space. And this is why a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist is not about technique. It is about how you make people feel around you. What type of safe space, a healing space do you create where somebody comes into that space, the anxiety should go down?
Well, the evening has raced through, but there are a few things I should flag because they are seminal to both their work and certainly of Dr. Bhavanani is, and I think that Dr. Bijlani sitting here has been a pioneer in that field himself, is really the bringing together, the collaboration, the partnership between, terrible word, alternative approaches to healing and modern medicine, and the integration of that in a non-competitive manner with great complementarity. I was first exposed to this by, if those of you who are interested, is the work of John Kabat-Zinn at Massachusetts General Hospital on mindfulness stress reduction, where patients who the medical system had given up on because there was no solution went to John Kabat-Zinn. And he was using what were secular principles, but which we now know draw from Eastern traditions and Buddhist ideas. And I think that the work that is happening with Dr. Bhavanani and Dr. Biagi in Pondicherry is taking that principle much further, and with deep research and actual practice. And I can't but ask him one final question, because I was told that he used salatogenesis as a phrase because he wanted us to ask, what does it mean? And I don't know how many of you really know what it means. So that was a very clever ploy to get people to wonder what they were doing. So what is it?
Recently, we were visited by the Romanian ambassador. And so she came to Pondicherry and she came to our university. And when she came to our, because we are like the, when people come to your house, you show them your doll set. So we are the doll set of our university. So any visitor who comes will be given a tour of ISCM. And the moment she saw that, she said, "What is this salutogenesis? Does it mean sun salutation?" And she's a yoga practitioner who has promised to come back because she loved our work. Salutogenesis is a term coined by Aaron Antonovsky, a social scientist, which actually has given us a very beautiful phrase to start, communication. So most of the time, if I were to come into an audience like this, I would say, how many of you have heard of pathogenesis? And quite a few people put their hands up. And then I say, how many have heard of salutogenesis? Most probably nobody puts their hands up. Because we have for too long focused on disease, patho. And so the genesis, which is the jananam, the birth of disease, has been our focus rather than the birth of wellness. So salutogenesis is all the factors that enable you to manifest wellness. And when we talk wellness, it is physical, physiological, psychological, sociological, maybe even financial, and most important, which we always forget, spiritual wellness. I just wanted to share two short anecdotes of the work we do. Because the moment you say alternative medicine, you create enemies. Because it is like, if you are in the room, I will not be there. It is either you or me. So then you go to the next evolution, which is complementary medicine, where it says you and me. So you or me became you and me, and integrative medicine is us. And that is what Professor Bijlani has done at AIMS. Today, what we see in integrative medicine is the hard work he did. As a young researcher, his 10-day program that he would devise, where they watched videos, they listened to talks, they did practices, they had dietetics. That is the comprehensive approach of yoga chikitsa, not just asana chikitsa. So by taking this into our hospital, we are actually following what WHO calls TCI medicine, traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine. And two examples. There was a patient of psoriasis, which you know is a skin condition. And we know that there is, along with psychoneuroimmunology and psychoneuroendocrinology, a new term, psychodermatology. And we know that skin conditions flare up whenever you are stressed. So this patient was not responsive to medical treatment. They were giving, the dermatology doctors were treating her, she was not responding. And they kept on changing the drug and trying so many things. And one day she just became so irritated, she asked one of the young doctors, "Can't you give me something else?" And yoga department is next door to dermatology in those days. So they said, "Why don't you go to yoga?" That is how it came. The referral wasn't like maybe yoga will help. Just get rid of the person, go to yoga. She came for the yoga and 2 weeks later became responsive to the medication. Now see what has happened by combining yoga with modern medicine. A drug-resistant psoriasis patient becomes drug responsive. So yoga is not a threat to modern medicine. It is an able ally. And this is the message we give. Another work we did, published in Indian Journal of Psychiatry, was on depression, adding yoga as an adjuvant therapy. And what happens is, at the end, you give medicine, depression comes down. You add yoga with the medicine, depression comes down a bit more, which is okay. But what we found on sub-analysis is the patients who had depression often also have anxiety. And that anxiety required another drug, whereas those who were getting the yoga, the anxiety also came down. So you were managing depression, and the anxiety was also getting managed without adding another drug. Now, why do people stop medication in chronic conditions? Two reasons. One is cost. Because if you have to take that same medicine twice a day for your whole life, you will become a pauper. Very simple. So people stop the medication because of cost. The second, side effects. You ask any patient, why did you stop the treatment? Side effect or cost? Now, if you can add yoga, which is non-pharmacological treatment, that reduces stress, enables the relaxation response, which facilitates what is today being increasingly called the healing response. You facilitate the healing, you can actually reduce the drug. When you reduce the drug, I'm not saying even go off the drug, I'm even saying reduce the drug. The moment you reduce the drug, you are dealing with much less side effects and much more cost-effective healing modality. So this integration of yoga with modern medicine is a godsend, both for the patients and for our healthcare system.
Thank you. We'll have to have another discussion another day on mind-body medicine. So if there are any questions, we will be happy to take them. I think what we will do is that do 3 questions together and then have the panel answers. So,
Good evening, sir. I am Sushil Dwivedi. Where it can be done here in Delhi, these teachings are yoga practices.
okay.
Well, if you want yoga in Delhi, Sumit is here, Shwetika is here, 2 of my bright young students who can help you with the wonderful work they are doing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
And online, I do a lot of things. Because till COVID, I was a person who believed nothing in yoga could be taught online. And I got converted because we were able to create a community. I call it the e-Gurukula, and it is a Zoom womb where seriously I have seen transformation even through the online sessions, but every participant has to keep the video on. Otherwise, it will not happen. Video touch.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. And deep gratitude and appreciation for your time, for your wisdom, and most of all for the workshops. And those of you who haven't had the opportunity to see and experience the methods that they have talked about. And it was something that we consciously did in developing the workshops, is that we could move beyond the conversation, we could move beyond words, because ultimately the experience and the aspiration that we're talking about is non-conceptual. It cannot be verbalized. And the techniques that are being used can only go so far when articulated as protocols, unless they are experienced and lived. They do not make the kind of impact. And it is really from our, again, my sort of favorite phrase, civilizational heritage, that combines wisdom with method. And it is because when the heart and the mind are both persuaded conclusively and decisively, that our reflexive responses change. Because you can listen to a wonderful lecture, or you can just go and do an asana. And one of the great experiences from the workshops has been that just when you breathe, for example, that when you breathe, you visualize that you are connecting with you're drawing energy from the universe as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, you see that energy moving back. And suddenly you do that and your universe expands from a purely I am breathing and a focus on the mechanisms of the body and the sensations of the body, which again reinforce the sense of the self that suffers. It opens up. And so it is in the practice that I think what Dr. Bhavanani and Dr. Biagi have told us, it comes alive. And I think there is no substitute for that lived experience. And just to share that what we've tried to do, we're trying to do fairly meticulous documentation on video of these processes so that there will be a poor but available substitute in the coming weeks of these methods, because I think the wisdom is still available in books and written material, but the transmission that takes place from the teacher, even if not a formal guru, is a completely different transforming experience, and one that is diminishing in our whole processes of education. So thank you very much for being the wonderful models that you are. May your breed thrive.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehrotra. May I also now request Seema Kakran, Deputy Director, WISCOM, which is Women in Security, Conflict Management and Peace, an initiative of the Foundation, to kindly share a few words thanking our speakers for today.
Good evening, and on behalf of the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, it's an honor for me to thank the speakers for the evening, Dr. Ananda Bhavanani and Dr. Sangeeta Biagi. Thank you so much. In today's conversation, you have explicated complex concepts for both seasoned practitioners as well as those of us in the audience, like me, who are relatively new to yoga. And I want to state that you have truly deepened our understanding of the transformative and transcendental potential of yoga, and laid out the steps involved in fostering a sense of inner serenity. We express our deepest gratitude to you.